percentage. I instructed him to proceed. The majority of the evening was spent working on my modified alarm keychain, which was no longer just a keychain but now boasted a surprisingly loud alarm for its size. To achieve this, I upgraded the battery to 9 volts for increased volume and duration. I configured it for remote activation and ensured it couldn't be turned off. The device, encased in a 3-inch PVC plastic with 20 drilled holes, had a small antenna wire protruding. After completion, I affixed 2 PVC caps on each end and painted it flat black with barbecue paint, though the reason for the paint choice was unclear. If everything went as planned, the only way to stop it would be to drop it into water. Attempts to make it watertight muted the sound, so I left it as is. Tracy had been in bed for a while, making it easy for me to slip the gadget into her purse, lining through a small hole in one of the side pockets. I estimated it would take at least 5 minutes for someone to locate and extract it from the bottom of the purse, which was sufficient for my purpose of provoking irritation before my departure. After carefully checking my work, I spent the next few hours loading desired items into my truck, picking up my body shop tools, and final check that afternoon. Clothing retrieval could wait until morning. With everything ready after Tracy left for work, I spent the night on the sofa. My wife, dressed for work, inquired about my morning plans. I explained that I got tied up with a project the previous night and was catching a few hours of sleep. She asked if I would eat anything, and I replied that I would just have coffee and an English muffin. Before leaving, she reminded me to rinse my dishes. As she pulled out of the driveway, I couldn't help but notice how good she looked. Was I going to miss her? At least for a while. I grabbed some trash bags and headed for the bedroom, intending to collect the clothing I needed or wanted. Suddenly, my daughter Carly confronted me, questioning my actions. I responded, asking why she wasn't at school, and she revealed that she already met all her curriculum requirements. She insisted that I answer her question. I placed the bags on the floor and looked at Carly, offering her coffee. As we walked into the kitchen, she managed a small laugh and asked if I had figured out that Mom was cheating on me. I acted cool and asked, "Figured what out?" Carly revealed that she found out about 2 months ago and expressed frustration that I hadn't done anything sooner. I explained that I only recently discovered the situation and was planning to leave. Carly pressed me for details and asked if I had talked to Mom. I admitted that I hadn't and questioned if she had. Carly explained that she confronted Mom about 2 months ago, but Mom provided no satisfactory explanation. It seemed like Mom wanted to get caught. We sat quietly for a few moments, contemplating the situation. I revealed that I didn't know where I would be going, while Carly shared her plans for college. I assured her that I had taken care of everything I could ahead of time. Carly asked about my boat and belongings. I mentioned my friend Felix from the project and how he would help me with a few things, including taking care of my boat. As I put the cups in the sink, I realized I never made that English muffin. Carly asked about the boat again, and when she realized I was giving it to Felix, she smiled. In that moment, I couldn't help but feel a deep appreciation for my daughter. 20 minutes later, I was hooking the boat up to the truck. When I got the boat, I was hoping that it was something that the family could enjoy together. Unfortunately, it was not Tracy's cup of tea. She hated the boat and the water. Carly and I went by ourselves a few times, but it wasn't the same after that. The boat just sat by the garage. I would not miss it. I had a few firearms and a deer rifle that my dad gave me before he moved to Florida. Felix would get more use out of them than I would, even though he didn't hunt. I piled all of my snap-on and power tools into the back of the boat. Mr. Handyman had retired. Felix was barely awake when I got to his place. He had 2 mixed-breed girls living with him, but it became quickly evident that they were not morning people. Felix got us a couple of early morning beers, and the girls went back to bed. When I was 15, Felix and I broke into a golf course maintenance shed. The sprinkler system for all 18 holes was old and had been done in copper. The maintenance shed had been full of copper fittings necessary to maintain the system. I decided that a lot of money could be made by reselling the copper, and Felix was more than eager to join with me. Needless to say, we got caught. Or at least I did. Felix got away. The cops knew that there were 2 of us, but I always insisted that it was only me. I got 2 years probation for being dumb, but made a lifelong friend because I kept my mouth shut. Felix was as white as I was, but insisted on talking as if he were from the ghetto instead of the projects. There was not much difference, but Felix had to get by in a different environment than I did. He adapted to his world, and I couldn't fault him for that. Felix questioned me about dragging the boat around and asked if we were going fishing. I explained that it was a present for my best buddy, and he jokingly claimed to be my only friend. I then told Felix that I was leaving town for a while and needed him to take care of my belongings. I slid the boat and trailer title across the kitchen table, and Felix laughed, thinking I was joking. However, I assured him it was a trade. I needed him to do something for me in return. Felix, eager to help, asked if I wanted someone passed away, but I clarified that I just wanted the person to spend some time in the emergency room or recovery ward. I emphasized not to kill him, only to hurt him. Felix's smile grew, and I explained that I wanted this to happen every 6 weeks for 6 months, or until the person left town. Curious about the reason, Felix asked if the person took Tracy from me. He immediately regretted his words, apologized, and fetched 2 more beers from the fridge. I handed Felix a 3x5 card with the name, address, and license number of Todd Wickham, and I asked him to wait a couple of weeks before taking any action. He looked at the card and nodded toward the door. The power tools and weapons were gravy that he had not expected. He took them inside the house while I unhooked the boat. We talked for a few more minutes and then parted ways. I could trust Felix. A year ago I would have said that there were 2 people that I trusted. Now there was just Felix. It was Tuesday. Tracy and Todd walked out of the company building and got into his Lexus at 11 right on the dot. Since I knew where they were going, I had no trouble following them. Todd's apartment. There was nothing lovey-dovey going on as they were just acting like a married couple. I gave them 15 minutes to get settled in and then hit the button on the remote control. Nothing occurred. The darn thing didn't function. What the heck did I do wrong? I exited the truck and approached the apartment building, pressing the button once more. Still, no response. While contemplating my next move, I opted to deflate Todd's tires in desperation. I might as well be productive. I only targeted the 2 tires on the side away from the building. In a last-ditch effort, I walked right up to the side of the building and tried again. It finally worked. I was outside of the apartment building, and the noise was loud and clear. The sound inside had to be extremely loud. It blared for about a second, paused for 2 seconds, and then repeated. Everyone in the apartment complex was now being entertained by my little gadget. I grinned as I walked back to the truck. Halfway down the block, I could still hear the beeping. Things were progressing better than anticipated. My lawyer was having the lawsuit papers delivered to Todd and the company at 2 o'clock. I would be gone by then. Carly was waiting for me when I got home. She handed me a card with her college address and her cell phone number, which I already had. She had a few extra things for me to take that I had missed, and even packed me a lunch so that I wouldn't have to stop until I got out of the state. She actually explained that when she gave it to me. We both had a good laugh and a hug. I left the power of attorney and my wedding ring on the kitchen table. Carly stated that she would be more than happy to explain things to her mother. My body shop tools were in the back of the truck under the bed cover. My personal stuff was jammed behind the seat in the cab. As I pulled away from the house for the last time, my cell phone rang. It was Tracy. I turned the phone off. It would have been interesting to hear what she had to say, but I refused to give her the satisfaction. Interstate 81 South was the best escape route. I didn't stop until I hit Chattanooga. It was a sleazy motel, but there was a bar next door. Big mistake. I drank way too much, and then discovered that while I was sleeping it off, one or more of the local boys borrowed all of my body shop tools. The back of the truck was picked clean, but they didn't touch anything in the cab. I don't know if that was because of integrity, or maybe they just couldn't carry anymore. I showered, shaved, and put on fresh clothes. After a much-needed breakfast at the local Waffle House, I hit the road for Nashville. I was kicking myself for being so damn dumb and trying to figure out what to do next without tools. I wasn't even going to try and get a body shop job. I settled in at one of the crystals in the area and started going through the help wanted ads. Most of the jobs were commission sales or minimum wage jobs. The ones that fell into normal categories I wasn't qualified for until I hit a small 3-line ad. Wanted auto damage appraiser, must have body shop experience. Conrad Insurance Company. I turned my cell phone on, called the listed number, and I got a name, address, and appointment in 1 hour. I deleted the 5 calls that came from Tracy. I punched the address into the GPS and headed right over. I always like to be early. I had never gone on a job interview before and realized that I was not dressed for one. It was too late now. What they see is what they get. There were 3 other guys there when I arrived. They were all well-dressed and looking good. Each of them had a folder in his hand, which I assumed was a resume. Each one entered the manager's office, stayed 5 minutes, and left. They didn't look happy. I was feeling pretty good because I didn't think that I could do worse than they did. The guy behind the desk was dressed well, but the clothes didn't fit the man. He was hard, with cracked skin and faded tats sticking out around different parts of his clothes. His hands were the things that I noticed most. They were calloused and gnarly, just like mine. This guy wasn't an executive. He was a metal beater wearing people clothes. He noticed me smiling and sort of smiled back. It didn't take him long to read over the interview form that I had filled out in the lobby. I believe I left half of the spaces empty. It wasn't a smart-ass move. I simply lacked the information to fill them. Hemingway, Daniel Hemingway. I clarified to him that no, I am not related to the famous author. He seemed relieved and expressed that he wouldn't want intellectuals hanging around the office. Grady Burgess, the man I was talking to, introduced himself and inquired about my presence. I made it clear that I wouldn't try to con him, having witnessed others being excused for attempting to give him any nonsense. I explained that I got drunk the night before in Chattanooga, and all my shop gear was stolen from my truck while I slept it off. I mentioned it's hard to get a shop job without the necessary gear, so this seemed like a good alternative. Grady seemed to understand, but he sensed there might be more to the story. I admitted that my judgment was clouded due to finding out about my wife cheating on me after 18 years of marriage. Grady asked about my wife's current location, and I replied that she was in Pennsylvania. He called Marcy, a woman in her mid-40s, to bring us 2 coffees. She set down 2 plain white ceramic cups without cream or sugar. Grady, with a loud voice, instructed her to cancel the rest of the appointments, indicating that they found what they were looking for. Marcy gave Grady a scowl and then gave me a little wink. I was looking a little sheepish when I noticed that Grady was smiling at my embarrassment. We chatted for about 2 hours, and then he carefully explained to me what the job entailed as well as the pay and benefits. The only downside to the whole deal were the image requirements. 80% of my job was going to involve contact with customers. Image was paramount. That meant a haircut and a complete change in grooming habits. I was expected to get a new wardrobe and a shoe shine kit. He emphasized that Marcy would personally help me with everything that needed to be done. I was expected to be in Atlanta by Monday morning for a full week of training. Conrad Insurance was an independent company, but worked as a subcontractor for several larger national auto insurers. Everything had to be done to specific standards. The company paid all the expenses related to the training, but the clothes and grooming were coming out of my pocket. Marcy seemed to enjoy the rest of the week more than I did. I was a little project for her. I insisted on going to a barbershop rather than a hairdresser's, but she made all of the rest of the decisions. Not only did I get a haircut, but I also got my eyebrows and ears trimmed, and my nose hairs pruned. Marcy informed the barber that I would be back every 10 days for the same treatment. My working clothes were pretty generic, khaki pants and white shirts. She even found a jacket that went with the pants. I also got 2 pairs of black steel toe dress shoes with a dozen pairs of black socks. She had found a small studio apartment for me and helped me get it set up. Friday morning, I got my Tennessee driver's license, and that afternoon, Marcy gave me the keys to my company car and a laptop computer before leaving me at the apartment that evening. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed me on the cheek. She expressed admiration, saying that if Grady wasn't so jealous, she'd have to jump my bones. While flattered, the thought of her suggestion made me shiver a little. It was time to give Carly a call. I spoke with Carly and shared that I had been hired for a desk job doing appraisals out in the field. I explained it was the first place I applied to, and I seemed to be in the right place at the right time. Carly asked about home, and I mentioned that I was fine, but Mom was a wreck. Carly was surprised, expecting Mom to be happy to see me gone. I noted that it seemed like Mom had a plan, but I messed it up somehow. Carly shared that Mom spent the first day sitting at the kitchen table, chanting, and being unresponsive when questioned. I apologized for messing up Mom's plans, and Carly speculated that Mom was anticipating some type of confrontation, but hadn't counted on my sudden departure. We both agreed it was unexpected, and I apologized again. Changing the subject, I asked Carly about her plans. She planned to leave for school as soon as Mom settled down a little, hoping to pick up a few summer session classes. I shared that I was leaving for Atlanta the next morning and promised to call her when I got back. Carly expressed that she was glad things were working out for me and believed Mom would break out of her slump soon. The training classes in Atlanta were a snap. It was mostly about putting the right information in the right block. The hardest part was overcoming my weak computer skills. I had no trouble getting a few of the young female trainees to tutor me, but found it difficult to resist their charms. They seemed disappointed in my reserve. The next 2 years flew by. Grady was quite pleased with my job performance and was generous with the raises and bonuses. I talked with Carly on a regular basis. She was doing fine in all her classes and with her social life. It was nice to see that she was dating, but as a father, I was a little anxious about the whole scene. She laughed at my concern. I never heard from Tracy. There had not appeared to be any attempt on her part to contact me. I was not hiding, so if she had wanted to find me, it would not have been a problem. She sold the house and prepaid Carly's tuition with the proceeds. Then she left town. Tracy called Carly every few weeks, but the relationship between them never returned to what it was before the incident. I had to give Tracy points for trying. Carly had no idea where she had relocated to and never asked. Tracy never filed for divorce. I could hold out for as long as she could. My social life was another matter. I never thought of myself as a lady executor, but I discovered that a new persona came along with my upgraded appearance and marital freedom. I was technically still married, but under the circumstances, I didn't feel that way. Nashville was full of young ladies looking for companionship. I always made sure that they knew that I was married and not looking for any type of relationship. That turned out to be a big plus with most of them, including a few who were married themselves. I was careful not to date any of the married ones more than once and never took them back to my apartment. It didn't matter too much with the single ones, as long as they knew that I wasn't husband material. Grady had hired 2 more guys to do what I did. I got to train them and supervise them. There was plenty of work to go around, but I got the feeling that something was in the wind. Grady approached me, expressing that we needed to talk. Despite his seriousness, what bothered me more were the words he used, the dreaded phrase wives often used when springing bad news on unsuspecting husbands. Grady chuckled at my groan. He assured me not to get too excited, mentioning it wasn't all that bad. We both laughed, but then he dropped the bomb. He said, "Daniel, I hate to say it, but you have outgrown the job." I was puzzled and asked, "What the hell does that mean?" Grady explained that I could do better than my current position, and although he had no complaints, he believed I should be thinking about moving on. Feeling a bit defensive, I asked if he was firing me, but he adamantly denied it. Instead, he clarified that he was trying to encourage me to move forward. Marcy came in with 2 cups of coffee, unasked. She leaned over and whispered in my ear, loud enough for Grady to hear, mentioning that Grady was afraid I might steal her away. She assured me not to worry, and added that if he let me go, she would go with me. Grady groaned as Marcy left the office, and the idea of her giggling lingered, sending a shiver down my spine. Grady then informed me about a job interview set up for me in Houston on Friday. American Consolidated Claims needed someone to run their national operation, specifically the appraisal section, and Grady had already spoken to them about me. I questioned why they wouldn't hire young, qualified college graduates, and Grady explained they had tried that 3 times without success. Curious about his motive, I asked, "What's in it for you? I don't understand." He revealed, "In about 4 years, Marcy and I are going to be moving to Gulf Shores. ACC has agreed to buy the business when I am ready to sell." I understood that he was not doing this out of the goodness of his heart, but using me as part of a trade. He admitted, "Exactly. See, I always said you were smart." We both enjoyed another laugh at his devious but transparent attempt to take advantage of me. Thursday night, I was on my way to Houston. I didn't want to relocate, but everything that Grady said made sense. I could have flown to Houston, but decided to drive instead. American Consolidated had 3 floors in an enormous office building. They were expecting me, and I was not the least bit nervous. I knew that I was capable of doing the job, and I was ready and willing to attack anyone who dared to question my academic qualifications. Knowing that their MBA employees had flubbed the job previously gave me confidence. The first 2 interviews went great. During the third one of the yuppie middle managers started to ask about my formal business training and was immediately shut down by his boss. I smiled at the support, but was upset at the same time. I spent the last hour with the human resources director. We were discussing salary and benefits as if my acceptance was a foregone conclusion. To be honest, at that point it was. It would be difficult not to take this job. It was lunchtime, and my host was anxious to show off the company cafeteria. The floor that we were on was as big as a basketball court. Field offices lined the perimeter, and cubicles dotted most of the center. My host expressed optimism about me enjoying working there. I reciprocated, stating that I believed American Consolidated Claims looked like a top-notch organization. I mentioned the potential occasional confusion with 2 department heads named Hemingway and clarified that I had no relatives in Houston. Unexpectedly, she brought up a distant relative named Tracy, catching me off guard. While walking, I noticed Tracy across the room. Despite her different hairstyle, she looked radiant, talking with a small group of employees. I couldn't help but stare at her as if hypnotized, and I accidentally stumbled into a mail cart, causing a small disturbance. Tracy noticed me, looking a bit surprised, and I took advantage of her confusion to quickly leave the floor. When asked if something was wrong, I explained that I wasn't paying attention and was admiring the layout of the operation. The elevator ride felt like it took forever. As we reached the cafeteria entrance, I thanked Miss Thurgood for her help and expressed my regrets about declining the offer. It was an unexpected move, and she stood with her mouth open as I quietly exited the floor and the building. I acknowledged that it was a great job and recognized that I might regret turning it down at some point. However, at that moment, being close to Tracy on a regular basis would cause more pain than I was willing to endure. I wondered why Tracy hadn't filed for divorce yet and hoped she would take her maiden name back when she finally did. Grady was going to be pissed. I'll handle that when I get home. 12 hours later, I was back home. Interestingly enough, Grady was more apologetic than angry. He expressed regret, saying, "Sorry, Daniel. I had no idea that your ex was working at ACC." I sat across from his desk and smiled as Marcy sat down, bringing 2 cups of coffee. I reassured Grady, stating that there was no way he could have known, and it wasn't anybody's fault. I admitted, if I had any balls, I would have just taken the job and faced her. As you can see, that didn't happen. Grady responded, "That doesn't make you less of a man, Daniel. There is no way that you could come out a winner under those circumstances. I probably would have done the same thing. I am sorry if I screwed up your deal with them." Grady laughed a little, setting down his cup. "No problem, Daniel. They still want it, and the deal is still on." Things continued as they were for the next few years. Carly graduated from college and married a nice fellow from Cleveland. I managed to attend the wedding in time to give her away, but did not stay. Tracy was there, looking beautiful. It was extremely difficult to avoid her, but I did. Carly was disappointed that I did not stay for the complete day, but she said that she understood and was glad that I showed up. I was happy that Tracy got to see her only daughter get married, and I started filling my spare time taking college classes. It made more sense than going to bars and picking up floozies. Most of the other night school students were older, and a few of the ladies were able and willing to fill in for the missing bar girls. Grady was happy to foot the bill for the classes. Eventually, it came time for Grady to retire, and all the terms of the sale had been finalized. Since I had expressed my reluctance to stay with ACC, Grady arranged an interview for me with a Chicago firm. Despite my reservations about going there, Grady explained that the employment package was fabulous, which seemed unusual given the competitive job market. Upon arriving at the Universal Amalgamated Insurance Building, I was taken to the 18th floor and saw the name on the door, Emmett Peak. To my surprise, the executive from ACC who had defended my qualifications during my interview there was there. The first 30 minutes went extremely well, but then things turned sour. Mr. Peak expressed disappointment over my sudden departure after our talk in Houston and mentioned being somewhat understanding after learning the circumstances. I apologized for running off and explained that I wasn't ready to face the alternatives that would have come with the job. Mr. Peak then questioned whether I had figured out a way to handle difficult situations better. He mentioned setting up another interview for me and asked a seemingly unrelated question about a small glass dome on Tracy Hemingway's desk at ACC. His question about Tracy worried me, and I wondered how she related to this interview. He inquired about the purpose of the black object inside the dome, revealing Tracy's relocation to Chicago. Mr. Peak expressed the value he placed on Tracy and his intention to keep her on the team, urging me to compliment her. Feeling trapped, I explained that the black doodad was a small item I made for my wife before we separated, unsure why she kept it. Mr. Peak asked about its purpose, and I decided to end the interview, stating that he would need to get that information from Tracy. I stood up, unnerving Mr. Peak, who seemed desperate and talked faster as he steered me to Tracy's office. On her door was just her name, no title or position description. As I walked in, Peak continued talking, and I noticed Tracy at her desk, older but more beautiful than I remembered. Over the years, I found myself dwelling on the bad things she had done, and my image of her deteriorated as my hate grew. However, the fact that I still thought about her often indicated that deep down, I still loved her. I hated what she had done, but I never stopped loving her. As this turmoil filled my brain, I realized that I was standing there, shaking my head slowly from side to side. It felt like I was trying to con myself. Her voice pulled me out of my reverie. "Daniel, nobody told me that you were coming. What are you doing here?" She started to get up, but I motioned her to stay seated. I sat across from her, not knowing how to start the conversation. "You look good, Daniel. You look even better than you did when I saw you in Houston." This was not the discussion I was anticipating. How was I supposed to react to that? There was no way that I was going to compliment her on her hair or dress. It was a game that I was not willing to play. Mr. Peak asked me here today so that I could explain what the doodad, as he calls it, is on your desk. Her hand instinctively went towards the glass dome, but then stopped. "That's crap, Daniel, and we both know it. He offered me a job again. He was disappointed when you turned him down in Houston." I didn't respond. I just sat. I had no idea where this conversation was going to go. "I want to talk to you, but you were gone before I could catch you." "Why would you want to do that?" "At the time, I was still hoping that I could explain things to you. Now I know that there was nothing to explain. It was all pretty well out in the open. I found myself regretting coming to see her. I pondered how to leave without seeming like a total fool. Why should I care?" She asked if I ever wanted an explanation. There was one thing that piqued my curiosity in her look, inviting me to continue. She inquired why I kept the little alarm. I explained that it reminded me of how stupid I was, looking at it and knowing that one mistake could ruin a whole lifetime. When I mentioned she only slept with him one time, she clarified that it was not what she meant. I asked Tracy before I left if she could provide me with a reason that wouldn't sound like a tired old cliché. She responded that she probably couldn't. Reminding her that she gave an explanation to Carly, she admitted that it was before it was too late. Curious, I asked what that meant. She explained that at the time Carly confronted her, nothing had happened, and she just sat and looked at Carly. The conversation was not going the way I wanted it to go. Somehow or other, I was going to have to listen to her tell me about what happened and why. I didn't want to know if she was going to insist. I was going to demand the Reader's Digest version. I didn't want all the details. She went on to reveal that up until about 6 weeks before I left, all Todd and she did was spend time together. They had lunch and saw a few movies. Todd knew what she was doing and agreed to help her. None of this was his fault. In confusion, I asked what the hell she was talking about. She clarified that it was a plan, Daniel. It was a plan that she set up to make me jealous. Well, not to actually make me jealous, but to make me pay attention. Perplexed, I asked again what she was talking about. She explained that she was buying me flowers and things, going out to eat regularly, doing everything she thought I wanted her to do. I was telling her it was all her fault, which wasn't what she was looking for. I sat without speaking. She mentioned that it was never my fault and that she hadn't thought about it until after I left. She realized what she had done and how wrong she was. Tracy was babbling. I questioned, asking what the hell she was talking about. She decided to start at the beginning, mentioning when Todd started at the company, she immediately noticed him. He was well-dressed, well-groomed, and well-mannered, everything that I was not. I asked if that was when she decided she wanted him. She clarified that it was when she decided she wanted me to be like he was. It was always me, not him. She wanted me to look like him and act like him, just like I do now. I questioned, "Okay, then what happened?" She explained that she knew it was bad in a marriage for one spouse to try to change the other. A good marriage depended on each partner accepting the other as they were. If she tried to change me, the marriage might go to hell. But if I decided to change myself, it would be okay. I remarked, "Okay, that is the first thing you said that makes sense." She continued, sharing that when she started to openly spend time with Todd, it was so that I would notice. Either I would confront her about it, or figure it out for myself and take action. I questioned, "Take action? What does that mean?" She clarified, hoping that I would get a haircut, a regular one like I have now, hoping that I would start dressing better and being a little more attentive. It never worked, and she never knew. She acknowledged that Carly figured it out and confronted her. Carly didn't know why, but she did know what she was doing. Todd and she still had not had lovemaking, so she didn't feel really guilty. But she was a little annoyed that Carly questioned her. She admitted she was wrong. She confessed to screwing up with her husband and her daughter. I asked if she had lovemaking with him, and she admitted yes. It wasn't his fault, it was hers. She knew it took two people, and he could have stopped it, but he didn't. I sat silent, not knowing what to say, having no more questions at the moment. About 2 weeks after Carly confronted her, Todd and she were alone at his apartment, drinking wine, which she acknowledged was bad for her. She was feeling miserable that I hadn't figured it out yet. One thing led to another, and they ended up in bed. Drunken lovemaking isn't very good, but it is lovemaking. They avoided each other for 2 weeks after that. She was a real mess at home, blaming what happened on me. I could have stopped it if I cared. She had lovemaking with another man because her husband didn't care about her. It was stupid, but I didn't end it. She was depressed and talked to Todd. A week later they were having lovemaking regularly, and the next week I finally caught them. But it was too late. She expressed regret for being slow, thinking everything would have been fine if she had figured it out sooner. I was being a smart ass, and she remarked that it didn't suit me. It was time to go. I sat quietly for a moment, trying to come up with some clever repartee that never materialized. What I did to Todd was cruel and unnecessary. She questioned why it was cruel, emphasizing that Todd never did anything to deserve it. He never tried to seduce her or disrespected me in any fashion. She expressed that Todd never attempted to take her away, questioning whether he had intentions of breaking up our marriage. She asserted that Todd only did what she had asked him to do, acknowledging that he made a few bad judgment calls. As a consequence, Todd now has to walk with a cane for the rest of his life. In her perspective, she expressed that it was not fair, Daniel. I responded, expressing that she should try walking a mile in my shoes before making such a statement. I mentioned that my response was as clever as I could manage on short notice. As I stood, I noticed tears welling up in her eyes. As I walked out the door, I heard an audible sob. 8 hours later, I was back in Nashville. Needless to say, Grady was disappointed when I gave him the news. However, he did have a very nice severance package for me. I called Carly and shared the details of the conversation with her mother. I suggested that she make an effort to contact her, but she didn't seem too responsive. A week later, I left Tennessee with a new pickup and a comfortable bankroll. I ended up in Yuba City. Merrill Kohout had decided to sell his auto body shop and move to Hawaii. I knew the business and was confident that I could run the operation and still send Merrill and his wife a nice little retirement check every month. It was a clean operation just outside of town and included a small 2-bedroom cottage in the back. It was all that I needed. 10 men came with the business. I kept 6 and let the slackers go. I could pick up some new ones as I went along. I was going to burn all those damn suits that I had accumulated, but I ended up giving them to the Salvation Army. They had a job interview program set up, and the suits would come in handy for somebody that needed them. My mustache grew back with vigor. It seemed to be happy to be released from the constraints that it had been forced to live with over the past few years. In no time, my hair was long enough to tie back. "Look out, Willie Nelson." Here comes Daniel Hemingway. The business flourished, and I felt like my old self. Things were going great until the week before Christmas. When I arrived at work that morning, there was a small wrapped package on my desk. I looked at it for a moment and called my foreman in. "What the hell is this?" "Don't know, boss. A lady came in early this morning and left it there. She said that she would be back at lunchtime." I sat for a long time without touching it. I knew what was in the damn box. There was no doubt in my mind. What I didn't know was what I was going to do after I opened it. I got a hot cup of black coffee and stared at the box for a few more minutes and then started to unwrap it. For some strange reason, I was being careful not to tear the paper. My foreman came back in and saw me holding the black plastic object with about 20 little holes in it. "What the hell is that, boss?" I set it down and leaned back in my chair. "I'll tell you after lunch."